everyone. This is Lily Luna, and this is part 4 of my analyzing the DMac police interview. So what was going on last time when we left off? They had just started talking about if he had ever hooked up with anybody else in a chat room. Anybody, not necessarily underage, although John does ask that, and DMac denies it, so who knows what the actual truth is when it comes to that. But we're starting to get into some of the more interesting / disturbing stuff. So let's go ahead and get started.
What's their screen names? Do you remember any of them?
I can try to. XX, Perfect Drug, XX, I think.
Where did you meet these people at? Which chat rooms? The same ones?
This has been over years and years, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I kind of wonder why. I mean, I assume John's angle here is he wants to make sure that Dustin has not actually had sex with somebody underage, but I just don't see how I don't see any way that they could track down these people just from a screen name. I mean, in 2006, I don't think they really have the technology or the ways to be able to track these people down. So I wonder. It doesn't even look like he's writing them down. But yeah, I have to assume that that's the main reason, is he wants to make sure there's no actual victims in there, aside from, there's victims in the photos that he has, but as far as, you know what I mean, people that Dustin has directly victimized himself, that's what he's trying to find out. I just don't see any way that they could actually do that, not just from a screen name.
And she was talking to me about she had moved back to Tennessee and she would like to see me again, and I was like, okay. I talked to her some, and then she disappeared again.
The one not this one, the one you had sex with.
Yeah, and she was, I want to say 21.
21. Nobody underage.
No, sir.
All right. What's your cell phone number?
Don't mute it out. Just give it to us.
And if I had the phone in front of me, I could tell you who's who, if I had anything with them, how old they are.
Where do you live at right now?
At home with my mama.
At home with my mama. Sorry, I just can't help myself. Alright, come on. Turn the audio back on. Come on, how long does it take to say an address? Oh, he's crying now. I wonder if he's...
I would rather...
Doesn't really sound like he's genuinely crying.
Okay, what city is that again?
Yeah, it didn't sound, by his voice, it didn't sound like he was...
I can't live in jail, and I don't want no problems. And
now, when you live there with her, is that your computer? Is that her computer? Or?
She bought it, but I use it.
Where's it at? In the house?
And I guess it's...
I think Dustin is really, again, starting to get that sinking feeling. Like he's asking about the computer, who's the actual owner of it, and he knows exactly what he has on that computer, and he knows that he may not realize the full extent of the trouble that it could get him in, that it will get him in, but I think he's definitely, it's starting to hit him again that this is not going anywhere good for him. You can hear it in his voice with the way he's hesitant and kind of slow to answer the questions. He's starting to realize that he's in some deep shit.
It's my living area.
Your living area?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bedroom. I've got 2 bedrooms. One's got my bed in it, and then the other one's computer desk, and
And that's your area?
yeah, computer desk.
Does she
TV.
use the computer?
Got 2
She
bedrooms?
has a
That
few
must be
times.
nice.
She's used it a few. She had her own, and it tore up. And she uses that occasionally and stuff.
So it's you and your mom just live together?
Her third husband.
He lives there too?
Yeah.
Why does it
he
matter
use
if it's
the
her
computer?
third husband?
He's used it a couple times to look at X-rays, and he's used hers a couple times. But
X-rays?
he's got a bad back and neck,
Oh, okay.
and he's not very computer literate. And
What kind of computer is it?
just one I custom ordered.
Oh, you custom ordered it?
Yeah, I ordered the parts, and I had a friend to help me build it.
Oh, really?
I can do parts of it, but I can't.
Yeah, so DMac is definitely pretty computer savvy. I mean, I know he said he can't do the whole thing. He needs help with some of it, but I mean, you've got to really know what you're doing to be able to put together a computer, even only partially. So he knows full well, what he's got on his hard drive and what he's got saved to wherever he's got it saved on. I think he says CDs or DVDs. Yeah, so he's fully aware, I think, of the trouble that's coming now because he knows what he's got, and he can't really play dumb when it comes to the computer stuff because from what he's telling us here, he knows computers. So he's not going to be able to, play the I'm just a nice country boy when it comes to that. And it's about to start getting even worse for him, which we'll get into. So let's move on.
Do a few things with it because
So
of
you're
my
pretty
hand.
computer savvy, though.
Somewhat depends on the subject.
Yeah, he is.
I mean,
Up until 2 years ago, I didn't know there was a caps lock button. Didn't know what that meant, so I didn't touch it. But you can build one?
with a
Going
little help,
back
yeah,
to
I
the
mean, it's
being
just
his buddy.
buying the parts and stuff on the side, and
What about a webcam? You got one of them?
no, sir. I had a.
Yeah, DMac doesn't seem like the type to get on webcam for a girl, and not because he thinks it's not right to do that. It's not that. He just doesn't seem like the type who would have enough confidence to do that. So it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't have. If anything, I think he tried to get a cam for the girl so that she could get on there. I think that comes up in the chat log. I think a couple times he offers to buy her a webcam. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Some kind of cheap digital camera that they had on TV. I plugged it up once to see what it was about a webcam, and I don't even know where the thing is. It's either in the closet or buried in the computer desk one.
Do you have any pornography on your computer?
Yes, sir.
See, look at the body language here. How as soon as he brought up porn, he covered his face. That's a huge indicator that he does not want to answer that question, that he's ashamed of the answer of that question, and that he knows this is getting bad. And for us, it means it's getting even more awesome.
Anything of anybody underage?
I don't think so.
Okay, that is just as good as saying yes. If you say you don't think so, that means there's a pretty good chance that there probably is. Or that means that you're hoping that it's there, but you're hoping that they're not going to find it. So that is anything other than an empathetic no, absolutely not. Which, of course, somebody could say that as a lie and be able to put on a good enough act. But you guys know what I mean. Anything other than a strong no to that means yes. in my opinion, because that means he's obviously looked at it, probably saved a lot of it, which we now know is the case. So yeah, he's starting to really really take the slide down now, and it's not going to be fun for him. But thankfully it's fun for us.
You don't think so? How could you not know?
Good question,
Did you
John.
ever see any underage on your computer, or view any images?
I've viewed images before.
Of un-
Yeah, now look at John's body language, the way he's holding the pen up, that kind of pose he's got going on. He knows he's on to something now that's gonna. He can tell he's gonna get a lot over on this guy, and he seems to be enjoying it, which good for him. He's good at his job, so he should enjoy busting these types of people like DMac, because he's just disgusting. I mean, there's no reason to give him any sort of slack because of anything, because of his condition. I mean, generally disabled people don't go around molesting children, so that's no excuse.
I think
of underage people.
not meaning to, and I don't know what else saved on it.
What do you mean not meaning to? How do you
Yeah,
not mean to?
not meaning
I mean,
to. Yeah,
you go
right.
on the internet and look at porno, and you don't know if they're of age or not.
Okay, that's a fair point. I mean, I can understand that you might go on a porn site and you might not be able to tell if a girl's 15 or if she's 18. I mean, some girls look older than they are, some girls look younger than they are. If it was something like that they had found, I I would find a little bit more forgivable. If you honestly don't realize that there's somebody underage there, but that's not at all what we're talking about in Dustin's case. I mean, there were like hundreds of images, right? I mean, there's just absolutely no way that this was done accidentally or done without a purpose or without anything. It was done for DMac by himself because he gets off on it. That's the bottom line. I mean, there's just no wiggling out of it, but it is entertaining watching him try.
Mm-hmm.
Some are.
Well, remember, I just told you I just found a caps lock button a couple years ago, so I'm not real computer savvy. So explain to me how you get porn on the internet. I understand you can punch in porn, but what I'm talking about is underage people.
I have to think that John's not as clueless with computers as he's coming across. I mean, who knows? Maybe he is. Some people are just not. I mean, this day and age, I think it's less common because they're just so ubiquitous. But, there are people who are not so good with that sort of thing, and they just don't really have the interest. But I have to think he's got to be playing it up a little bit because he just wants the information that DMac's about to give him about where he's finding it, what does he use to get it, where is it coming from, because then they can go after, the source and, maybe bust some more of these sickos. Let's just put it that way.
Do you exchange porn with other people?
No, sir.
Okay, how do you?
I will change that story a small bit.
See, I like how he phrases that. He said, "I will change that story a small bit." That's him telling on himself without intending to. Because he's admitting that what he's telling him is a story. It's a fabrication. He used the word story a couple of times, not realizing that it's what that's showing, but he's admitting that he is not telling the God's honest truth. He is weaving up a story with some, half truths in there, maybe some withheld details, some exaggerated or minimized or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's, if you had any doubt that he was lying, that pretty much washes anything away. Not that I think anybody at this point thinks that he's being on. I'm just being honest. Yeah. Not falling for it, DMac. Moving on.
I have a female friend that has sent me a couple female photos of a couple of her friends on Adult Friend Finder or something like that.
Okay. So the porno that you're looking at is off of websites.
Yeah,
Is that what you're telling me?
yeah, and off of Emulx, and I mean
Off of what?
a download program.
Download.
What did he call it? Emulex? I mean, this was what, 2007. So I don't know a ton about pirating and downloading and stuff like that. But I mean, I know way back in the day, I used Napster and Kazaa, and I think like 2007, I think it was like LimeWire, or maybe that was earlier. I can't really remember. But I don't know what this Emulx program is. Is it a site that's just for general things, like it could be for music or movies or whatever, or is it like just a porn thing? Maybe if somebody knows, you can write it in the comments, because yeah, before this I had never heard of that before. So moving on.
Download program. What did you call it just now?
Emulx.
Emulx.
It's Emule, but you don't have to share stuff to send.
So that could be just other people sending you stuff.
Yeah.
Do you save porn on your computer?
Yes.
Videos or just pictures or both? Or?
Both, and I'm.
Yeah, see, again, he just didn't want to answer that, because you heard how soft that yes was. He really doesn't want to answer these questions.
I need to delete it. I meant to.
Do you burn any CDs or anything of it?
I think they have been burnt CDs of it, and I don't know exactly where they are. I don't know if they're on the desk, if I've thrown them away or what. I can't.
Yeah, you probably know exactly where they are. And I like how he's already saying that he's gonna delete it. Like, he says it again coming up here. He says, as soon as I get home, which you're not going home, buddy, not anytime soon, I'll delete it. And I like how he's blatantly telling the cop that he has plans to delete evidence. Now, I know he doesn't realize the full ramifications of what he's saying, but it just shows his naivety and how he doesn't know anything about the legal system, the situation that he's in. He's going to be in for several rude awakenings along this journey, I think.
I mean, I'm getting rid of it as soon as I go home because I don't.
Yeah, yeah. And again, if you don't want trouble, you should not download child porn. Just as simple as that.
And I mean, I help my buddy do DVDs, and I mean,
Did y'all ever burn any porn DVDs?
No, he does wrestling DVDs of himself. Okay. That over the years, and I've edited the matches down,
right,
so he can sell them and stuff, because they're his matches. And I mean, I can't lose the computer because I can't help him if I lose the computer.
Yeah, they don't care, DMac. You think the cops give two shits about what he uses the computer for, editing some, some wrestler guy's matches down. They don't care. If they need to take the computer, they're gonna take the computer. And if that was the worst thing that happened to you here, you would be damn lucky. But thankfully, it wasn't. Thankfully, he did get a prison sentence out of this, because he absolutely deserved it. And I don't say that lightly. Having your freedom taken away is a really big fucking deal. I mean, it is one of the worst, if not the worst things that can happen to you. So I don't say things like that lightly, that I wish somebody would go to jail. For the most part, I am for keeping people out of jail, unless it's somebody who really, really needs to be there, like in this case, or, people who hurt people, rape, murder, rob, whatever you want to go. But for, more minor crimes, I'm pretty against sending people to jail for a long time. I would rather not see that happen to a person. So, I'm not one who says, oh, just lock them up and throw away the key. That's just not, that's not really my mindset. So for me to say that, it means this person has really kind of gotten to me, because I think he absolutely deserves, if anything, he should probably still be in jail. He probably should have gotten as much time as Westerbeck, although Westerbeck did have that previous. But I really don't see him as any better than Westerbeck. I really don't.
And I help him with his website. And I mean, I'm being honest with you, sir.
And there we go again.
As soon as I get out of here, I'll go home and delete any porno off the computer. Go through every DVD I have, CD, whatever. I say DVD and CD, and it's the same thing to me, because it's the basics.
Pornography in itself, looking at porno, isn't necessarily legal. What I'm interested in is if you have pornography abundant.
I wonder if it occurred to him, because I think if I was in that situation, if I was, which thankfully I'm, not somebody like Dustin who is a sicko, but I would think if I were in that situation and I were trying to get out of it, I would, as soon as I had a chance to make a phone call, I'd call home and tell them to burn my computer, dump my hard drive, whatever they had to do. And I know there's still ways, I don't know if they had sophisticated enough techniques back then to be able to find stuff even after it's wiped or deleted. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I wonder if that ever occurred to him to try to get, and I mean, they, calls that come in and out of jails and prisons are recorded, so they could pull the phone call and use that as evidence. But I wonder if he might not even have thought of it. He might have, I think he does realize that is going to get him in some trouble, but he might just still be in the mindset that, after he'll spend a night in jail. At this point, at this point, I don't think he's even fully realized that he is going to be spending the night in jail, and I don't know if he got bonded out or if he sat in jail throughout his trial or what. But it hasn't really sunk in yet, because John has kind of, when he says something about he can't handle jail, John sort of doesn't really dodge it, but he just kind of says something understanding without saying, well, you are going to jail regardless. So he hasn't really fully realized that, I don't think. So he, at this point, is probably still thinking that maybe this won't be so bad. Maybe he can somehow still talk his way out of it. So yeah, he probably didn't think to ask a friend, his mom, whoever, to get rid of that stuff.
Underage people, and you told me not that you know of. What is the likelihood that we're going to find something that's somebody underage?
There's probably a few photos and a few videos that I had downloaded.
Like
there it is.
Yeah, but like I said, I ain't went through.
You downloaded them?
Yeah.
By a few, he meant a lot more than a few, which is not too hard to figure out. You admit to something lesser and hope they move along and leave it at that. But there were way more than a few, and that cost him. I mean, that cost him, what was it, 3 years that was added to his sentence, because I guess he was getting 5 for the sting, and then that's another. DMac, man, I wonder if now that he's out of prison, if he learned his lesson, or if he still does this sort of thing on the sly, because we know that going to jail, going to prison does not, it maybe even in most cases, it doesn't deter these guys from doing the same things over and over again. So I would be very curious to know if Dustin is still indulging in that sort of thing, I guess I would say. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
did you save them?
But I have not went through all of them.
But did you save them?
Yeah, they're on the hard drive, and I mean, at one point it was saving things in different folders.
Trying to dodge, not gonna work.
Went through everything to see what it is. Right. That's what I'm saying.
Did you what's the likelihood that you burned any of these to disk where there's underage people?
I don't think.
His body language is interesting to watch here because it's like when he's talking and trying to convince John of something, he's kind of animated. He's got a lot of hand motions going on here. I'm kind of doing the same thing, even though you can't see me, obviously. And then when he's finished talking and we go back to a question from John, or John's making a comment or whatever, he goes back to, he's got his head in his hand, and he's kind of turned away a little bit, and you can just see by the expression on his face that he's just not having he's having a rough time of it right now. So it's really interesting watching both of their body language and kind of being able to tell like where they're at in the current moment.
I had because the ones.
You don't think? I'm asking you what
No.
the likelihood is. Do you remember ever burning any?
The only ones that I've burnt to DVD, I had viewed, and there was no children in them.
Did you ever share any pornography with underage people?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
What the hell? Why does he say? I know everybody's commented on this, but why does he say no? Like it's like that's like he's a stand-up guy for never showing it to minors. Like who the hell cares? What you did is just as bad, if not worse. Probably just as bad as doing that. So yeah, I like how he says that, like, oh no, I didn't do that, so I'm good. Like he thinks that's gonna get him out of something, but not gonna happen, DMac. It's so satisfying. It really is. It's satisfying, watching him wriggle around like he's on the end of a hook or something. I mean, it really, really is.
Share porno, period.
Once you get it, yours?
Yeah, you got to find it yourself.
Okay.
And I mean, because I don't know who would be on the other end.
So your mom and I guess your stepdad and you live in this house. Is there anybody else that lives there?
No.
No children?
At one point, her niece was staying with us, and
Okay, I don't really know what to make of this. He did not want to answer that question, obviously, because he paused and he let out that sigh, and he was already starting to be kind of quiet when he started leading up to that question, but he really did not want to answer that. And even though it's not something I particularly want to think about, I have to wonder why that is. And there could be a couple of reasons. It could be that he just knows that that will look bad. The fact that there was a child living in the house that he would have had, presumably some access to, some opportunity to do, something to that child. And I do find that somewhat plausible that that could be the case. But it could be that, but just the way he was so uncomfortable with answering that question, it really makes me wonder. I hope that's not the case. I hope he didn't do anything to the whatever child was living with him, but I I do also think that it's quite plausible that he could have. I I wonder if they ever. I have to think that they must have. Surely in the investigation that this would have come up. I mean, it comes up right here. Surely I would think that any children he had access to, that they would try to find out if she. So he didn't get charged with anything like that. So I have to assume that they must have talked to, the kid, or the kid with their mom, or whatever, however they go about doing that. And I mean, I can't imagine that they wouldn't investigate that. So hopefully it's not the case that he did anything, but he definitely really did not want to answer that question.
It's your mom's niece.
Yeah, I would never think of doing anything. And
How old was she?
you're asking a hard question because I can't even remember our birthday sometimes. 6 to 8, and I mean,
You never did nothing with her?
God, no.
Okay, he does say that with some conviction, and he just judging by the tone of his voice and how quickly he answered that, I I almost believe that that's true. I could believe that that's true, just judging on kind of his body language, kind of the way he answered the question and the conviction he said it with. And I mean, I could be wrong. He could easily be lying. He lies his way through 99% of this interview. But I do think there's a chance that that's true, that he's telling the truth about that. Of course, we'll probably never know for sure, but he does say that with enough conviction that I could believe that that's the case. And again, I hope that that's the case.
What's her name?
I don't know her last name.
Okay, now this is where it gets really suspicious because everything that I just said, yeah, it could be true that he didn't do anything, it could be true that he didn't want to answer the question because he didn't want them to or he didn't want them to suspect him of that. But the fact that he's not giving him her last name, I mean, again, Dustin is not a stupid person. He has enough intelligence that he's going to know who's living with him. He's going to know the first and last name of his cousin, even if it wasn't somebody that he was particularly close with, that, he may not have been close with the kid, but I mean, surely he would know her whole name. I can't think that that wouldn't be the case. So he's not wanting to give out the whole name. Maybe, again, it could, the only legit reason I could think of, aside from he's trying to hide something that he did, is maybe he doesn't want to get the child involved. He doesn't want them to question her. Maybe, and not even that that's legit, but I'm just saying a reason that is something other than he's trying to cover up something he may have done to her. But yeah, that's super shady that he can't come up with a name of his own cousin that lived with him to give to John. And there's something that comes up in the chat log, not about that specifically, but that I want to touch on a little bit. But let's move on, and then I'll get into that.
And
Who's your internet provider?
it's changed over the years, and if they don't change it, it's going to be Earthlink because
No, people still use Earthlink in 2007. I like how Dustin tries to crack a little. I didn't even hear what he said, but he tried to crack a little joke here and smile, like he's trying to. And John's not having it. He's trying to lighten the mood a little bit here and get John to go back to being his buddy. He's trying to kind of manipulate the situation, but not gonna work here, buddy. We're getting into the big boy questions, the really serious shit that he should really be worried about. So cracking jokes isn't gonna cut it.
When's the last time you get on your computer to receive pornography?
To receive porn.
Notice how he never or rarely answers a direct question. He kind of, he repeats the question, or he just starts talking about something else, or, oh, it depends on this or that, or whatever. Very rarely does he actually answer a direct question without adding something to it. So that's just another indication among the many, many others that we've seen that he's lying, that he's trying to come up with the right answer. He's not, when you have to think about it, it's pretty obvious that you're not telling the truth. So he's just trying to come up with the best answer possible, but he's already given enough answers that are going to really bury him, that anything he says from here on out, it could get worse, but it's certainly not going to get any better for him.
Been a while.
Been a while.
Been a long time.
When's the last time you chatted with a girl other than the girl that you got picked up for tonight?
In what manner?
Talking about sex or anything?
I was aggravating a.
Okay, I think what he's about to talk about is he was talking to some. He says aggravating. He likes that word. He uses it a lot. He's about to say something about he was flirting with some lady who I think was married or something. I guess somewhere in there, but that doesn't really. It's not really pertinent to the interview. But that I'll talk about that one thing now because I don't want to run. I'm at 35 minutes. I don't want to run too much longer because it doesn't really come up in the interrogation. I've brought it up on Facebook before. The fact that the decoy had a younger sister. That's actually a very common thing with the perverted justice decoys. That was a common tactic of theirs, is to throw in, not in every case, but in many of the cases, they would throw in a younger sibling. Usually it was a younger sister. And what that is that's just a tactic to see if the predators will, you know, kind of go after that piece of information. Like say, oh, you got 8-year-old sister, huh? Maybe she can come along, and then start kind of grooming the kid to think that it would be okay for the 8-year-old to join in or whatever the age is. So that's a common perverted justice tactic. There she does mention her sister, but it doesn't. I believe the age of the sister was only mentioned once. Let me see if I can. Oh, that's not gonna work because they have the time stamps in here. Let me try searching for sister. Okay, it's only said 3 times in the whole, but here's where I've read through this whole chat log now a couple of times, and the age of the sister, I think, is mentioned way earlier than this, like more towards the beginning of the chat log. And he is told that the sister is 8. Now, where we're at right now is towards the end of the chat log, because up a few lines up, she gives him the address of the bust house. So this is shortly before he shows up at the house. And he says here, referring to her sister, would you let your sis join us? But would you let her join us in sex one day? Which, like we just said, the sister is 8 years old. So he is proposing a 3-way with his 13-year-old girlfriend and her 8-year-old sister, which is really, really sick. And that would also support the probability that he did do something to his cousin, which in his words was 6 to 8 years old, right around the same age. And now, just in the interest of examining every part of an issue, I do think that there's a chance that DMac didn't remember what the age was of the sister, because by his own admission, he's, and I think this is true for, maybe not for Lorne, but for a lot of these guys, is that they're not just talking to the decoy, they're talking to probably, several other people, whoever comes up in the chat room, and then because that's how a lot of, they just kind of throw out the line, see what responses they get, and then they just go from there and just go with the ones that kind of, start responding to it. So I do think there's a chance that he did not remember that she had said her sister was 8 years old, because he doesn't ever mention her age. He says, having sex with sisters is hot, but he doesn't ever say anything in reference to the sister being so young. So, and neither does the decoy doesn't either. The decoy doesn't say anything here about, oh, but she's only 8, or but I kind of wish that she had, I wish that they had probed that a little bit to see if that's in fact what he's proposing. So yeah, I think it really could go either way. I do think that there's a reasonable chance that he may not have realized what he was saying, but I do think there's also a chance that that's not the case. And it's not, I'm not in any way, I think it's pretty obvious that I'm not in any way trying to, you know, say anything good about Dustin or say anything in defense of him. My interest is just in examining the facts and examining the truth and just using logic to follow, what I think is true. So just with that interest in mind, that's my opinion of it, is I think it could go either way. But there's definitely a very good chance with all this other stuff that we're finding out here that he in fact knew exactly what he was proposing. I don't know if this knowledge is out there, but I don't know what the nature of the porn was that was found, the child porn. Was it teenagers, which is bad enough? Was it, preteens? Was it really young kids? What was it? I mean, that kind of tells you something about somebody who is a pedophile. Basically, it kind of tells you where exactly their interests lie, whether it's a certain subset of ages, or whether it's just all ages, or just a certain one, or whatever it is. So yeah, that's just kind of my feelings on that. I think that just judging, because there have been other people on Perverted Justice. There's one in particular that is on that top 10 most slimy ones, that the decoy mentions a 8 or 9 year old sister and he runs with it. He says, in fact, at one point, it's this guy right here, this Kalo Woodsman. Yeah, if you guys ever want to read a really disturbing chat log, read this guy's, because it is very disturbing. But yeah, this guy at one point actually believes he's talking to the 9-year-old. The decoy pretends to, put her on the computer and starts talking to her, starts grooming her, is well aware of how old she is and, what it could do to her. He says he just doesn't care. So yeah, there are definitely people they've caught that do go for that. But I do think, I mean, Dustin's definitely, he's sick. He very much is. Shortly after, actually, let me jump back to where I was, because shortly after he says that, see, that was here, he starts getting a little bit more aggressive. Like here he says, one day I do expect you to have a threesome with another woman. Like he expects her to, not just, hey, that would, that's like a fantasy, maybe if you're comfortable with it, maybe someday we could do that. No, he just says he expects her to. Like, the fuck do you think you are, DMac? Come on. But yeah, this is because we're, again, towards the end of the chat log, so he's getting a little bit bolder, he's getting a little bit more aggressive, he's getting gross. He says here, she had to go pee, need me to wipe you. Yeah, he's into some really, really disgusting stuff. I mean, he's pretty raunchy, and I don't mean that in a good way at all. I mean that in he's a pervert. That's an even better way of putting it. He's just perverted. And again, I don't mean that in any sort of like funny way or cute way, or like the way you call your boyfriend a pervert or something. No. This is not anything remotely related to that. He's just disgusting. Yeah, he really, I mean, he really tries to play it up like he's just this nice country boy, plays up, the accent, his soft voice, his kind of demeanor, but there's really something really not good lurking under the surface there. And he, and I could see his demeanor fooling people, not in this case because of what they caught him doing, but just people in general, having him come across as this really nice guy when really there's something far more sinister lurking down there. Let me see, what are we talking about
Late
here?
20-year-old last night or the night before.
Oh yeah, he was talking about that lady. Okay, so I'm at 45 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. We've got, let's see, about 40 minutes, almost 40 minutes left in this interview, and I think a good portion of that time, John's not in the room. I think they leave him sitting there for a little bit of that. So I don't think there's a ton more to go. Maybe I can cover the rest of it in the next part. If not, I'll go to 6 parts. But we'll see with part 5 if I can get the rest of it covered or if I'll have to do another one. So I'll see about that. But until then, this has been Lily Luna, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.